Hi everyone. First of all, I want to take a moment to appreciate you for watching and sticking with this series. In any educational video series, it is common to see a drop in viewers as we move toward the later chapters, which means those of you still here are part of a dedicated few. So thank you for continuing to support my videos. Alright, let's back to today's topic. In this video, I'm going to introduce a very important data container in C, the struct. You can think of a struct as a collection that holds multiple variables, possibly of different data types, and a struct can even include other structs. Okay? All of these variables inside a struct are called members. And understanding structs is actually the first step toward understanding classes in C++. In fact, in C++, structs and classes are quite similar, but in lower-level system design, which is often written in C without object-oriented features, the difference between a struct and a class becomes more noticeable. So how do we define a struct? The first thing we need to do is using the keyword struct and followed by the name of struct. Suppose we want to define a struct for an employee. We can name it employee. And then use a pair of curly braces to define its members. For example, we can include a name, which is a character array of them 32 and an age and ID number. Both are integer type. After defining a struct, how do we declare variables and assign values? There are two ways to declare variables from a struct. The first one is we declare right after the struct definition. Just like we can declare John and Ren. And here, John and Ren are global struct variables that can be accessed throughout the program. Okay? The second one is we declare locally, just like regular variables. Now let's see how to access the members of a struct. Suppose we want to assign a value to the name members of Ren. And since name is a character array, so we need to use the standard function called string copy to assign a value. The first parameter is Ren name. And we use a dot to access the member. Okay? And the second parameter is the value we want to assign. In this case, it is a string ren. Okay? For other members like age and ID, which are integers, so we can assign values directly. And there's also another way to initialize values. You can assign initial values immediately upon declaration using curly braces, just like this. Now let's combine what we have learned. Suppose we want to use a function to initialize the values of a structure. How should we design it? So first, we can define a function named initialize. And that doesn't return any value. Okay? The first parameter is a struct employee as a parameter. And since we are declaring the structure statically, so it is better to pass it by reference. Okay? And the second parameter is a constant character array name. The const modifier means the string won't be modified. Okay? And the third and fourth parameters are the age and ID respectively. Okay, and now we can copy this implementation into this function. And change this to parameters name. Okay, now let's code the function and print the structure's members to verify that they were correctly initialized. Let's see what the output looks like. Okay, let's quickly review how to declare a struct using dynamic allocation. We need a pointer and use malloc to allocate memory. And we better check whether the dynamic allocation is failed or not. Okay, here's a key detail. Since ren is now a pointer, and we don't use the dot operator to access members, instead we use the arrow operator. Okay, let's wrap up with a small assignment for you. How would you modify the initialize function? If you are using a dynamically allocated struct, would you still use call by reference? And what changes need to be made to the implementation? I will leave that to you to think about and practice. Alright, in this video we covered how to define and declare a struct, and how to use static and dynamic allocation, how to write a function to initialize struct members, and I left you with a practice question to try on your own. I will see you in the next video.